Hi, students. Welcome to video 17 on mining. So one of the first things that happened with laws pertaining to mining is in 1872, the United States had put forth the U.S. General Mining Law. Basically, it encouraged people to go westward and expand the United States. You could pretty much go and get land for free. And up until 1995, we still paid the same prices, which was almost free. Um, as in 1872. So this really was encouraging people to expand westward. In 1992, we did put bonds to cover cleanup in case somebody went bankrupt while they were in the middle of the process. But pretty much, we were trying to encourage people to go and get new lands. Anything you found on the land was yours. You didn't have to pay taxes on it or anything like that. It was yours to sell. So, some vocabulary words that we might be talking about throughout the video. Ore is a useful material that can be extracted and pretty much mined for a profit. So, things like metals, salt, and sand. Metals are elements that conduct electricity and heat, like copper, nickel, aluminum. These are all things we have to mine for. And a reserve is a known quantity of something that we can actually recover. So, there might be other reserves that are unknown, but the known reserves are ones that we're actively mining for right now. So what do we use these resources for? Energy we would use for coal and uranium for energy. So coal is a sedimentary rock. Uranium comes from a mineral. We also use aluminum, copper, and gold. Fertilizers require phosphorus. We use table salt is halite, so that's something that has to be mined. Gypsum is what the walls in your house and the ceiling are made out of, and other building materials like limestone, sand, gravel. So almost every building, if it's not made out of wood or any material that's not made out of wood, it's going to be made out of some sort of mineral or rock that we had to mine. These are all non-renewable resources, so once they're gone, they're gone. It takes millions of years for them to form again. So when we look in the crust, where we're actually doing most of this mining, most of our minerals and rocks are going to be made up of silicon and oxygen because the crust is made up of silicon and oxygen. So those are the two most important things here. We also have some aluminum, iron, magnesium, those kinds of things. But again, these two are the most important ones that we should know. So here's some different materials and where it's spread out in the world. The main thing to know here is that every country has something. So materials are made depending on the geologic history of the region. And so we can go to different countries and find different things. So not everywhere is going to have aluminum, but if you don't have aluminum, maybe you have uranium. So you're going to have different places, and this requires a lot of negotiation because maybe we don't have a certain resource in the United States, but maybe another place has that. So you kind of have to, trade and be open to negotiations. Sometimes we even go into a region and we mine it ourselves and we bring back those materials. So this is kind of a graphic that shows you if you're an American and if you were born here and you've lived here most of your life, this is on average how much materials you're going to be using in your life. So some things you may know, you may be like, oh, I know what that is. Almost 38,000 pounds of salt, and this is not just the table salt that we eat with our food. This is also like putting salt on the roads to prevent the ice and stuff from sticking. We also use lots of oil, almost 73,000 gallons. This is mainly for transportation. We use lead, we use coal, mainly for heating our homes, producing electricity. You also have almost 1,000 pounds of copper, mainly from electronics that we're going to use over our lifetimes. So a total of 3.125 million pounds of different materials over our life. So the life cycle of metal, you should remember these words from our lab. Overburden is the stuff we have to get rid of to get down into the deposit. So that's like the layer of cookie we had to get rid of for our chocolate chips. The gangue is the worthless material that's surrounding the ore. So remember the chocolate chips were our ore. So the gangue is all the other stuff I need to get rid of. Smelting is heat and chemicals are added to basically melt the ore and turn it into a mineral and extract it. And tailings and spoils are piles of waste rock that are left behind. So this would be the stuff that you have after you have mined your chocolate chip cookie that's just kind of, cookie crumbs around the paper. So some types of surface mining, we have both surface and subsurface. Surface mining is when it's pretty close to the top to the surface, and I just have to remove maybe the A, the B, possibly the C horizon to get to it. You have mountaintop, open pit, strip, placer, and dredging. Mountaintop is I'm basically cutting off the top of the mountain a little bit at the time with usually explosives. And then I carry it around, and I do have tailings that I have to put somewhere because I can't build that mountain back up. It's just not going to work. If you try to build the mountain back up, it's pretty much all going to erode away. Open pit is this picture right here. So something's close to the surface, and I can basically dig a big hole to get to it. Strip mining is I'm removing things in layers, and I'm taking it kind of like contouring the land, trying to get down into the stuff. And then placer mining is what we kind of think of when we think of the California gold rush, where I'm going and panning in a river or stream or something like that. And then we have dredging, where I can take and scoop out the bottom sediment of a lake or the ocean, and I can kind of get anything that might be on the bottom. So this is just a closer look at mountaintop removal. Here's an example of after I have used the explosives. This is what the mountain looked like before, and now it's just basically a flat surface. And again, I'm not going to be able to build that mountain back up, but I can make use of this area and turn it into something. So subsurface mining is if the deposit is greater than 100 meters down. This is mainly looking for coal, and I'll have an elevator so I can take people and also trucks and equipment down with me. It's going to be much more expensive. It's also going to be much more dangerous because you can imagine, maybe this will collapse on somebody. So again, subsurface is a lot more dangerous, but it is less environmentally destructive. I'm not destroying the top surface of basically all of my wildlife and my plants and animals. But I can have collapses happening, explosions from gas leaks. My mining workers will be inhaling mine dust. If it's coal dust, that can lead to black lung. So here's an example of a picture of a lung that from a coal worker that had black lung. And in all types of mining, I'm going to be doing some degradation. So some things that can happen, my overburden and tailings do not allow for plants to grow. Plants will not grow in, imagine like a heap of sand. I'm also going to be losing my type soil, which contributes to soil erosion. Subsidence is when I have cave-in. So maybe I dug a big hole in the ground, and eventually that remaining layer will wear away, and my stuff on top can actually fall into a sinkhole. We also have a very famous coal fire that's been burning for about 50 years in Pennsylvania. It was set on purpose. They were burning trash in the mine, but they didn't realize it was going to take off like it did. And it's projected to continue burning for 250 years because there's enough fuel down there. So here's what it kind of looks like in that town. And then you can have acid mine drainage. This is when sulfide minerals are going to react with oxygen and rainwater, and the reaction produces sulfuric acid. And this is what that might look like. And this is mine effluent, which is mine drainage coming out and going into our waterways. You can also have a couple of issues with the tailings. So tailings themselves, remember, this is like the waste pile of rock left over. It can have cyanide, arsenic, lead, zinc, all these heavy metals that can get into the groundwater. We also purposely do cyanide heap leaching, which is adding a cyanide solution to these heaps. And basically that cyanide attaches to the gold and takes it out and leaches that gold into the solution. And then we can get the gold out that way. So that's the way that we're extracting gold from our mining heaps. Another byproduct of this is hydrogen sulfide or hydrogen cyanide gas, which is extremely toxic. And if you look over here, it takes about 200 tons of rock to produce 1 ounce of gold. So we have a ton of waste material just to get to that little bit of gold. Other things, we're removing forests. We're also destroying habitat and fragmenting habitats by building roads into these areas. We're increasing the erosion because we're getting rid of the forest ecosystem. And then we've talked about diseases like black lung, but then you can also get bronchitis, emphysema, asthma will become worse, any kind of lung disease. Specifically, coal mining is the worst because it does have, like, black lung is such a bad situation. Here's some coal miners that are coming out of the mine. You can see they're really dirty. They're breathing in all of that dust. So even if you're wearing a mask, you're still going to be breathing in some of those dust particles. You also see it's very labor-intensive work, just mining in general, but specifically coal mining because of just how much we do it in this country. And finally, some legislation. The Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act basically says that land must be minimally disturbed while you're mining, and then it must be reclaimed afterwards. So remember, reclamation is putting it back to a useful purpose. So you guys had to reclaim your cookie when you were done. Other legislation that's related is the Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, Superfund Act, which was the Toxic Hazardous Waste Act. So basically, there's all these laws set into place where you cannot pollute the air and the water, at least not to a certain extent, when you are doing these things. Now, not all countries are going to have these laws, which means that it might be less expensive to go into some other countries and mine instead of staying in countries that do have these reclamation laws. All right, that's it. Bring your questions tomorrow.